it's me, your host, Nathan from Smile. This is Most Clicked, a podcast about digital marketing in the higher education sector. I'm joined by my co-founder, Matt Lees, and also bringing in some additional insights to today's episodes. It's our long-standing collaborator, Carl Campbell from The Education Marketer. Now, this week we're talking about blended learning and how a lot of people a lot of institutions may be shying away from it. Kyle, what's the story?
Yeah, so this comes off the back of a piece that was published in 1KG, and it looks at the impact of Professor Susan Orr's report into how blended learning is used across the higher education sector post-pandemic. Now, the general sort of trend here is that post-pandemic, even though I'm saying post-pandemic like it's over. The pandemic isn't over. It just seems to have moved out of the cultural zeitgeist, hasn't it? But with higher ed, we seem to be, even though we're back into in-person teaching, there's still an element of blended learning, which I think is actually really positive. It means we're taking the best of online learning, and we're trying to make it work and think like it's 2022 rather than like 1967. So it's quite positive. But this report outlines that actually, based on insight from students and how they respond to blended learning, their focus isn't on the mode of study. They're less bothered about the idea that it's blended, and they're more focused on the quality of the teaching. And I think, Nathan, that you've been going on about this for years. I've known you. It's not the digital. What is it? It doesn't necessarily mean the digital platform, right? It's how the content and the quality of that content is delivered on it. So you can have a state-of-the-art digital platform, but if someone can't present or whatever it is and engage digitally, then it's going to be an issue. But ultimately, blended learning, despite what the UK's media says, mainly the Telegraph in fairness, is actually quite a good thing for the education sector, because it allows people to have better access. The benefits of it completely outweigh all the other arguments that I hear against it. And I don't think there's even a massive issue with it anyway, but at least with this report goes through. So for me, it's a breath of fresh air, given that we've got some really charged rhetoric against blended learning on campuses at the moment.
I remember in the pandemic, there were some US institutions investing in serious, state-of-the-art virtual learning environment type thing. I don't mean like Moodle. I mean there's one university, I remember it had this Zoom wall where the tutor could see all of the students as if it was like a full-on recording studio, and everything was produced. And I was like, wow, imagine being in that class. It wouldn't be like death by PowerPoint. It'd be like watching, we're talking, we often talk about masterclass.com, these kind of, it would be that level. And I feel like some universities, what blended learning is to them is probably just let's hop on Zoom. And it feels more like a meeting than it does an educational experience, And there's the other thing that it was quite timely when I was looking at this was there was an article in, I think, ironically, the Telegraph.
Of course it was.
About South Essex College, and they announced new plans in an effort to tackle rising energy costs. And that plan was to basically say to students, don't come in on Fridays. We're going to work remotely on Fridays. We're going to learn remotely. So here's a college that's actively, promoting blending learning. Now, is it for the right reasons? I think that's where some of the backlash comes. But also, they must have looked at it and gone, you know what, blended learning, it's fine. It really works. Students love it.
It's worked for over a year, didn't it? It wouldn't suddenly stop working. And obviously there's, we're yet to see all the fallout from students having their education delivered digitally, right? So, the result isn't conclusive. There's some research that comes out that it's been a bit of a negative impact, but it's not just the fact that education was delivered online. It's the fact that we went through something quite traumatic as a human race, right? It's not the education that was delivered through Teams. So yeah, I think there's still a lot of benefits to this, and I think the issue that the college has, isn't it? Like a lot of the feedback coming from parents isn't necessarily about the quality education. It's the fact that they've got to put the heating on like an extra day. Okay, so I get the Telegraph's position, but they're not focusing on the quality of education. They're focusing on like heating bills, cost of living, which is a massive issue. But someone's got to pay for it, haven't they? So if the college can't afford it, what's better? The college shuts. I don't know what the solution is. But yeah, it's not an easy one to work out. But the argument is not around the quality of education; it's around cost of living. There's an important distinction there. So, do colleges need more support? Yeah, their buildings are like from the 70s. They're not designed for today, are they? So, I don't know. I'm going to throw it back over to the government. get a solution.
I'm curious. What do you think the future of the campus looks like? Because surely it doesn't make sense to have all of these campus buildings that are just empty for 2-3 days a week. It's odd, right?
It's what the future of education looks like, isn't it? I mean, and again, it's not like a proxy to South Essex College, but in the States, they've suffered a huge enrollment crisis. And the fastest colleges to recover are those that now have a dominantly remote offer, right? The data doesn't lie, okay? These are the colleges that are getting more enrollments. These are the ones that have an easier time. And it's because they have squared that circle. We're actually realizing young people are fine with an online education, especially if they're concerned about cost of living, especially if they're concerned about, faster degrees. We've spoken about Google in the past. They condense like years worth of education into like 6 months remotely. I think we're hitting a sea change here. So the future of the campus, I think there's always going to be campuses and places people come together. I just don't think you need this one mass. You don't need it. You don't need this one mass location. It's a nice to have. Don't get me wrong. There's always going to be these campus universities like Harvard, like Stanford, whatever it is. But this is 2022. The stuff you can learn online just from subscribing to like a business newsletter is remarkable. The cost you pay and all that sort of thing. So I think we're witnessing a very interesting time in education. Definitely a transition period happening at the moment.
See, I'm with you in theory, and like I've submitted another proposal for this podcast about. There's this amazing case study about National University over in the US who are just killing it. There's a wicked Forbes article about it. I won't go on about it. We'll save it for another episode.
Sure.
But I think I agree with you, but I think campuses will stay. And here's why. Accommodation and estates. Universities have invested tens, if not hundreds of millions into accommodation linked to these physical campuses. And I think I read something recently that was like universities make more money on the stuff around the education than they do on the education. They don't. I'm not saying they don't care about the delivery of the degree. Of course they do. But
it's one revenue stream, isn't it?
They really care about accommodation and services, so they want you to be on site. So I think,
and having worked in a uni as well, I concur. Filling rooms is desperately important.
But there's ways to repurpose it, right? Like there was one university that we were working with during the pandemic, and not necessarily for teaching spaces, but certainly for staff spaces. They were letting people work from home, and then they were using those spaces for other commercial purposes. So they're still making money from them, but just not filling them with students.
Yeah,
and there within lies the opportunity. I think it's the opportunity probably isn't there to your red brick institutions that have got campuses worth ungodly amounts of money. Right, that's clearly a draw. They're not going to knock down a 200-year-old building or something. But the opportunity exists for universities that don't have those ties, the universities that don't need to draw people into campuses, or they could repurpose those spaces. And I think with a little bit of creative thinking, you could find a way to be different. Matt and I had a tutor at university, and the one soundbite from him that was stuck is, when they zig, you zag. And everyone's zigging right now. So, and there's definitely a way to find that zag. And I think that would be so interesting for a university to find when it comes to campus and blended learning as a whole.
Yeah, 100%.
So that's my takeaway from the week. Thank you very much, Kyle and Matt. I'm going to sign off here before the sun completely blinds me from my window here. But thank you to all of our subscribers. If you like today's content, please do like and subscribe. And until next time, bye.